All right, welcome to the Suicide Monk, and I am your host. Today we're going to be speaking with a friend of mine. She is one of my biggest supporters, a really good friend, and her view in life is lived through and lived out in her faith in Christ. And we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about her faith, my faith, and delving into some of those topics and issues. We don't always see eye to eye, but that's the beauty of it. We can have a conversation about our individual belief systems and accept each other for who we are. But I'm going to start this podcast out with a prayer that she had sent me several months ago when I started this right before I started this podcast, actually. She's, again, just been a huge supporter in every aspect, financially, on social media, and spiritually. She's done wonders and walked beside me. She's newly engaged, which is beautiful and fantastic. I love that. So congratulations to her and her new fiance. He's a good man. He'll do good things. So this is going to be an interesting conversation, a little bit different than what you're used to, but it opens a little bit more into who I am. And even though I don't necessarily call myself a Christian, I do follow a belief system that is that walks alongside Christianity. So sit back and enjoy. And again, we're going to start this podcast out with a prayer. So it's beautiful and it touches my heart every time. So I just wanted to share that with you. And so, sit back and enjoy, and I will see you on the flip side.
Hey, Britton. I hope that you're having a good day so far. I'm sitting with the Lord outside right now in the book of Isaiah, and the Lord just brought this to my mind for you. And I just want to preface, this is not like an attempt to save you or change your mind. I know that you have to go through your own walk with the Lord. But also I know that you believe that the Lord speaks to you through other people. And so I believe that this is something that He wanted me to share with you today. This is a story in Isaiah chapter 38 about King Hezekiah, who was a king that came into reign after a lot of wicked kings that had set up idols and basically led Israel to corruption. Hezekiah comes in and just is a voice for the Lord in a desolate place and tears down the idols and sets Israel straight, pretty much. And Hezekiah, at his young age, becomes sick and near death. And so Isaiah the prophet is sent to tell him that he was going to die. And it says in verse 2, when he heard the news, Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed to the Lord and said, "Remember now, O Lord, I pray, how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart, and have done what is good in your sight." And Hezekiah wept bitterly. And then after his prayer, the Lord decides to add 15 years to his life and continue his life, basically. And so then down in verse 15, Hezekiah's response to the Lord, hearing his prayer, says, "What shall I say? He has both spoken to me, and he himself has done it. I shall walk carefully all my years in the bitterness of my soul. O Lord, by these things men live, and in all these things is the life of my spirit. So you will restore me and make me live. Indeed, it was for my own peace that I had great bitterness. But you have lovingly delivered my soul from the pit of corruption. For you have cast all my sins behind your back. For Sheol cannot thank you, death cannot praise you. Those who go down to the pit cannot hope for your truth. The living man, he shall praise you, as I do this day. The Father shall make known your truth to the children. The Lord was ready to save me. Therefore, we will sing my songs with stringed instruments all the days of our life in the house of the Lord. And so, yeah, when I read that, I just remember what you were saying about like feeling like there's not really a purpose or direction in the life that you've experienced, and you're waiting for, I don't know whether you're waiting for society to show you that or for the Lord to show you in some radical, crazy way. But yeah, I think that when I really look biblically at the purpose of our life, it is to praise the Lord and to just be, bring delight to his throne room. And that looks different for all of us. And I know that the first step to that is surrender, which you have mentioned, like you've done time and time again. And so, yeah, I just thought of that and also like when it says in verse 20, the Lord was ready to save me. I think that's why like talking about your situation, I just had like a lot of peace, because it's like, I know that the Lord isn't going to let you die, because I know that he is ready to show up for you, and he's ready to save you even in your most desperate and desolate moments. And I'm ready for that for you. I'm praying into that for you, just for the Lord to show up in the way that he knows you need, because I know that you're not content with typical Christianity in the sense that most people are, because you were created and designed very uniquely, and your mind was as well. And so, yeah, I just had those verses on my heart for you today from Isaiah. And so I'd love to continue to share with you snippets that the Lord puts on my heart for you, if you don't mind, but also if you don't like it, then I do not have to. But the last thing I'd like to do is just pray for you, for your day and for your mind and for healing and perspective to be brought. So, Heavenly Father, thank you so much that you're here and that you came and you walked a life in the flesh. And so you know what kind of struggles man faces. You're not a distant God, but you're a high priest that was made holy through suffering. And suffering makes righteousness, and it makes us like you, because in likeness with you, because you had to walk through the worst suffering man could endure when you took all of the weight of the world on your shoulders and into your mind the day you died for us on the cross. And so, Father, thank you that you can relate to us in a way that maybe we will never understand, and that you choose to stay with us even in our most desperate and undeserving moments. And so, Father, I just want to lift up my brother Britton. I know that you know him better than anyone else on this earth, and that you know his pain and his struggle deeper than anyone ever could. And so you know what he's looking for. You know what his pursuits will end up leading to. And you know what will help change his perspective. And so, Father, I just pray for any oppression or anything that is of the enemy that is clouding his mind, that is not of you, to leave in Jesus' name. I just pray for true hope and healing and renewal of mind to flood his being, and for your peace to be laid heavy upon his soul. And I pray that he could believe this for himself, that you are a God of redemption, and that you are a God who sees him even when he can't see you. And so, Father, I just pray that you would rest your hand upon him, that you would hide him in the shadow of your wing, and so that the enemy would not have a grip on his mind, and that you would free him up to new perspectives, new way of thinking, that you would reveal yourself to him and be made new to him in your word and in daily life, that he can be able to see so clearly how you have worked in his life up until this point and all the places you've showed up for him. Father, I also pray that you make known to him the areas of his life that maybe he hasn't fully surrendered, where he thinks he has, or areas of his life that are keeping him from knowing you to the full extent. Father, I just pray that you, convict him and just show him what's up. Show him how to look more like you and how to get the answers he's looking for. Because we know that you direct our steps and that you reveal things to us in your timing. And so, Father, I just pray that you lead him into deeper understanding, into closeness with you, because we know you love us and we know that you loved us enough to give it all. And so we just pray that you make that known to him. And in your heavenly name, Father, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, yeah, just want you to know I'm thinking about you, that God has put you on my heart, and I will continue to be praying for you. So, I love you, the Lord loves you, and I hope you have a good day today.
All right, so I want to go back to that because what were we talking about?
I think just the core of our belief basis about, because we were talking about intrusive thoughts and kind of like why or how they originate, because some people have different levels of that. Like you were talking about OCD, right. And like me, like I can have an intrusive thought every once in a while, but then it will leave just as quickly as it came.
Right. You don't entertain it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's like my brain doesn't force me to, but like right. You were saying, some people's brains like force them to relive things that in their hearts and in their mind, like they don't want to be thinking this.
Right.
But they can't help it. And so kind of like our core belief as to why that is. Like mine, I believe it's because we're born into a broken body already. Like our bodies are already broken to begin with, and our souls, our minds we're born sick. That's kind of like my belief coming into the world, even as a baby. We're entering into a sick atmosphere, a broken atmosphere, and that will shape broken and sick people, whether they want it to or not. Because, I mean, who wants to be an abuser? Who wants to end up a murderer? Like, no one wants that. But if they entertain the wrong thoughts long enough, if they're around the wrong environment long enough, eventually that's what their mind and environment will shape them into. And that's even people who aren't born into that can, like, still end up just being some of the most horrendous people on earth.
Oh yeah, so that's my question is, are we actually born into that? Like, I know we're born into a broken world, but I think a child is it's the most innocent thing that we have until humanity gets a hold of it.
Right.
And so then going back on the belief system, I think, at least right now in my life, that we just get to experience a version of what hell looks like, of knowing what good and evil looks like in the biblical sense.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really off the wall theory, but and I'll back it with scripture here for you. Is like, I knew you before you were ever born. Like there's I don't remember, your name was written in the book of life, blah blah blah. Okay, so there's this, I believe there's a passage where it says, I knew you before. Is there not? Maybe we need to look that up.
Yeah, I knew you before I shaped you.
You're looking at me a little confused.
No. Counted the hairs on your head. Like, the Lord definitely had knowledge of us, our personalities, before we even entered into a fleshly form. Okay. And so I understand the reference that you're speaking.
Yeah, so my thought is, we're 1 in 2 million sperm that make it to this life, okay? We're the ones that won the race, basically. Yeah. If you're living, you won the race. And if he knew us before, then what is it that, are we not up there saying, hey, I want to see what this looks like. I want to know what this experience is. I want to see what you've made and what I want to be a part of and what I don't want to be. I want to have choice. I want to experience that free will.
Right. Well, and it kind of depends how you look at it, because it could be when he says, I knew you before, someone could look at it as, oh, so like he physically knew us before we became like as we know it on earth as this physical form, or did he just have knowledge of the future? He could see ahead. He's just omnipresent throughout all of time, knowing that who we would become before we became it. Because I think that's more how I look at it, is instead of me pre-existing, he just knew who I would become. He knew the relationship we would have. And that's, to me, how I interpret that. But again, like, I don't necessarily think that your interpretation of it is wrong. I just think it's different. And I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. I think one day when we get up there, we can ask him. And he'll answer it. But to me, like, when I hear...
So you think this is predetermined?
Like, I think that he just is all knowing. So I think he'll know who my kids are before I even have them. He already knows what kind of relationship he's going to have, because I think he exists both at the beginning of time and at the end of time all at once. Like, he's just
So
not limited.
what would be the point in that, though?
What do you
Like,
mean?
if he is all-knowing and omnipresent, and maybe I'm misunderstanding omnipresent, or even all-knowing, but there's no mystery. What's the point of being a God if there's no mystery?
Like, you mean that we're not a mystery to him?
Well, and maybe I'm thinking of this in a time and space situation, but if I know it all, then who cares? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
There's nothing more to know.
Yeah.
I've done it all.
Well, and I mean, just because God is everywhere all at once doesn't mean he is involving himself everywhere all at once. Not that he's not. I mean, he's involved in our lives all the time, but he's not like, I don't believe personally that he's some puppet master up there micromanaging, controlling everything I do. Just because he knows, like, what I do or what I will choose or what path I'll end up on doesn't mean he doesn't open up the different doors. And like, that's what I think is beautiful and messy about just humanity, is that we have been given the ability to logic, to dream, to think up what is not yet. Like, that is something that is very unique only to humankind, is to dream what is not yet. Like, no animal can imagine or comprehend what is not reality, like what is not then and there. But people can dream, and we can build, and it be innovative, and that's why we have outdone more than any other species on Earth. And that's what's so cool. And so that's what I believe is the free will that we were given. But that is both a blessing and a curse, because we can abuse that free will just as much as we can create with it. But yeah.
So how does that play into, if he knows us and we're here on Earth and he knew us before, how does that play into other religions' suffering? Even my own suffering. How does that, like, it's not like I haven't prayed or been diligent or spent many, many, many years, seeking God and then not finding God. And only until recently has evidence really proposed that he might be present. Mm-hmm. And that's a lifetime of suffering, though.
Yeah. Before
he's like, oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
Walking towards my death, and then with absolute hopelessness. Mm-hmm. And then there's a little bit of hope.
Right.
But the tables have been flipped upside down, and now I can't walk away from the trajectory. So now either I have to rely on God and him not show up and say it's okay, or him show up and say, oh, that was great. So how do you reconcile that? That's because, again, I was watching this other podcast, The Soft White Underbelly, which was fantastic. It's about those stories about human suffering from trafficking to homelessness to OCD to pedophilia to rape to, these are all the things that this guy is. Mm-hmm. And you look at and you watch these people, their videos of these people, and you see the suffering and like the unrelenting suffering that they go through. And I relate to that. There's no quality in this life when you suffer that greatly, even because you can't see outside of that. Mm-hmm. Most of the time.
Yeah.
You can't see outside the suffering. You can't, like, I didn't have the life to promote positive thinking. Mm-hmm. And every time I failed, it was a perpetuation of failure after failure after failure. So where's God in all of that? And does he actually answer prayer? Because in my mind, or at least my logical, the evidence doesn't sustain his presence.
Yeah. And I think, like, obviously, I don't have the perfect answer here.
No,
I can
no, no,
only
no.
speak off of my
But you
personal
do.
experience.
So
But
let's. You do have a good upbringing. You do have a positive upbringing. You have a nice family. You have these things that are that were put in place because of good decision making on your family's part. For many years, for generations, that has perpetuated that for you to move forward. So the upbringing is different, and the mindset is different.
yeah. And it's like, and we're, as Americans, it's like, because it's interesting, because I have been brought up in a really great home and with loving parents, and I haven't always seen it that way. Like, rebellious teenager, hated my family, was like, oh, like, people can die. Like, it's just, we're tormented with, just, even though things can be so great, our minds can just make it so imperfect because we're so discontent because things have to be our way. And then I, like, traveled the world, and I saw different cultures where it's like there's women who will be born and die in the same plot of land, they're like, and stay in that dirt patch their whole lives, and they're perfectly content. They don't see their
Right.
life as missing out on anything, or they don't see it as suffering. But I mean, again, that's just, I think it really comes down to perspective, because it's like, when you tell me that you feel like you haven't seen God move on your life, like, I would disagree with you, because I feel like what I've seen happen in your life, especially recently, but also, like, when I knew you and just the people that were your friends and the people that you had an impact on, like, in my perspective or my perception from an outsider looking in, I was like, you may have these struggles, but there's something really cool happening around you, like, with your impact on people. And I think that is, even when I read and go to scripture and I open it up, I see nothing but life of suffering that is promised, because it says, on this earth the wicked shall prosper. And you will, as my people, you will look at them and say, why? Like, why is this? What am I doing this for? Why am I believing in you? What is this faith about? If I'm not going to prosper like they are, then what's the point? But it's like, he's looking at us like, the point isn't to obtain what they have. You already have the greatest thing that any human could ever desire, which is connection to something greater and beyond this, like, very finite and temporary existence. And I think that it's about the perspective of, what is your ideology of blessing? What is your ideology of success? And because for me, as someone who I've decided to devote everything to my faith as much as I can. I'm not perfect at it, and I try to be better. But it's like, all that I want is more of Christ. And I'm like, I don't even care if I die tomorrow. And if I lose it all tomorrow, that's going to suck. If I lose my fiance, that's going to suck. If I lose my family, that's going to be the worst. But it's like, they were never the point, like, of my existence in the first place. The point of my existence was to glorify God. And so it truly, I think it just comes down to, like, a very selfless view of our humanity and our existence. Because you even see David, like King David, who had it all, like, just in tears, weeping, just because he felt like God wasn't close to him. Like,
Oh yeah.
This man had everything materialistically, worldly, that he could have wanted, but because he felt God wasn't close, he was like, my life might as well be over. Like, he was like, Lord, take me back. Like, and I think that's just the picture. Like, we're here, I believe, like, I'm here to encounter the living God. And when I do, he's not going to feel consistent in this space of earth, because it's not heaven nor is it hell, but we are in a separation from God here. And that's what makes it feel like a kind of hell, like, where suffering seems to be the only thing that some people can focus on, where other people who are only focused on worldly things, they might be thriving and rolling in riches and success because that's all they want. And I feel like part of the reason people are sensitive to suffering in such a way that you are and other people who really care is because they have like God's given them eyes and a heart after his own of like, see, there's more to be had in the human experience. There's lack here. And I think we have to realize the lack in order to seek something else. Like if we never lacked anything, if we weren't ever suffering on this earth, then why would we ever seek after something more, God?
Right.
And
right.
now to why it has to get to such a bad extent for some people, I don't know. Like I don't know that there is a perfect answer, but yeah.
Well, and then so I grew up in America.
Yeah.
I grew up Catholic and then Christianity and then, but not all the world gets that opportunity. Actually, a lot of the world doesn't even have that knowledge.
Like system in place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I know there's biblical text that says go out and spread the word and blah, 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 but we can't even take care of our own. So how good is that? Like is the whole system messed up? Is the whole purpose? Like, and then there's, if God knew me before, did I do something? Is this a temporary punishment for something I did prior that I don't know about? So these are the questions I ask myself. It's like, why do some people get it worse than others? Like I've had it bad. And as I'm watching people, there's people that have had it much, much worse than I've had it. Our suffering's not really any different because I can relate to their suffering and I can see it and I can feel it. And, but my what I think I'm discovering is that most people, regardless of where they're at in life, are in some sort of struggle.
Yeah. Even me, who's grown up in like a perfect,
Yeah.
well, as you would put it, like the most, let's say, ideal situation.
Right.
I've grown up in a very ideal situation, but it's like my own mind and my own doubts still can torment me if I like dwell on them too much. And that's why like I tell people whenever, especially they're struggling with like identity issues or like just self-destructive thoughts, it's like you have to know what's true about yourself, because what your mind will tell you is not always what is true about you. That is not always what other people see. And even like if it comes externally from like bullying or just like they're just projecting their own hurt on you, that doesn't make it true about your character, your body, who you are. And so it's like people, whether their fight is as massive as dealing with taking their own life or as, I don't want to call it minute, but like smaller as just like not wanting to go out, leave the house without makeup. We're all dealing with some sort of like self-destructive or just not seeing ourselves for truly who we are and like how loved we are.
But how do you find that when you're in the midst of fairly consistent abuse? And that usually starts with the home, and a dad leaves or a mom leaves, or there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, and then that transfers to who you choose as your friends. And then it's just a perpetuation of one bad thing after another.
Yeah.
And you don't, like, your mind at a young age is so conditioned to think that you are worthless, that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, that what people are telling you is true. And then as you walk out into society, it's affirmed by the sickness of society.
Yeah. And
it's, so you don't know who you are truly. Like, I'm just at 53 discovering that I was a nice kid. That I'm uncovering that I was probably a really sweet child.
Yeah.
Like, I was probably loved.
Yeah. And did you come to that conclusion because people, like external sources, were like affirming that in you? Like,
I think I came to that realization because of my son. He was a sweet boy. He was a very he's like looking at in a mirror for me.
Yeah.
But prior to certain things in his life that happened, there was this vigor for life. He was nice. He was good. He was sweet. And it's not like he's lost any of that. It's just, it's overshadowed by other things. And that's what happened to me. Like, I think I was a good person. I think I was a decent boy. But by the time I was 5, I knew something was terribly wrong with the world that I lived in. And then that conditioned me, and then anger and rage and all that stuff took over, and then it just destroyed my life, methodically destroyed my life. Not that it, I always, I kind of talk about that in third person, but it was my action, my reaction to life, my fault, but it is also a separation, because it's not who I am. I know I act out of it, but it's just not who I am.
Right.
I don't want to be mean.
No, yeah.
I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be in a rage. I don't want to be hateful. I don't want to be brutally, like, just, it's terrifying.
Yeah. It's not your heart.
But not at all.
Yeah.
Not even close. But it is a part of my character. It's a part of how I've functioned in society. It was my protection. It was.
Yeah. It's like your reactionary habits, like forming a characteristic that you like recognize and see as destructive, but it's like what has helped preserve you in a sense. And so it's like almost become something you rely upon whenever a circumstance gets tense, because you've seen how it's worked in the past.
It's my safety net.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and that's, I don't know how else to put, and it's an ugly safety net.
Yeah. No, that's,
I don't know.
yeah, no, that's I think that's just good for someone, especially like me, to just like get to talk with so many different kinds of people, and like, because that helps me ask better questions too, even when I'm like sitting in church and everyone has like the same answers, or if I'm like reading scripture and I'm like, okay, Lord, like, yeah, I can see how this works out for my circumstance, but like, what about like your people in general? Like, how do you show up in general? And like, the thing is, he doesn't show up the same for everyone.
No.
And like, to your point earlier, like when you're surrounded by it, and like, I've heard crazy stories. Like sometimes the Lord just shows up to people in dreams and he like intervenes himself in a crazy way. And then other times he puts one person in your life, and that's like the person who can speak truth and reality to the people who are speaking lies and self-destructive thoughts. And it truly does take separating yourself from the self-destructiveness. And that's like not easy to do when you're a kid. Like you can't do that just on your own.
Right.
But it does at some point. There needs to be some break in that in order for truth to come in. So whether that's like divine intervention, like on some radical level, or like on a level of just a person stepping into your life, willing to talk to you, willing to like hear what you're going through and speak against that, to me, those are opportunities where light is coming in. The Lord is, in my perspective, the Lord is like extending a hand, extending truth to grab a hold of that and to follow that out of the muck and the mire of just what the world would have you believe about yourself, which is, if in your case, if you're worthless and you're disgusting and like you're an angry person, you're not worth it. It's like, I would hope that now that you've surrounded yourself somewhat with like people who like love you and care about you, you at least know that if those are the thoughts you're still having, you know that it's destructive. Like you can separate that from like, this is not true about me. This is not good. This is what I wrestle with like in my head, but I know that's not true and it's not good because people have shown me otherwise about myself.
But,
you know?
But it is true. It is true that I'm this person. Mm-hmm. So it's this simultaneous walk with my darkness and my light. I mean,
but it's not all you are.
It's not all I am.
Right. It's not like all-consuming identity.
Exactly, and that's what it used to be.
Yeah.
Like it was 75%, 80%.
Right.
darkness.
Right.
And now it's 25%.
Well, right. That's more like what I was saying is that you've had other positive things spoken over you and into you that have you, would you say that that's what's helped it go down, or?
Well, I think yes, but it was my willingness to believe that what they were saying is true, because that's
Yeah.
the very difficult part. It's
Yeah.
not, there's a lot of compliments that people will dish out. Well, I say that it's been more recent. Well, and maybe I'm not really thinking about that. I guess I haven't thought about that in depth, but we'll just take recent events, and people encourage me on the podcast or random texts telling me that they really liked a certain aspect or something I said, or even a trait of my own that they really like. And it's been a really difficult but necessary process for me to just believe what they're saying.
Yeah.
And what that's doing is transferring into my language. Even still, it's a doubtful language, but it's still transferring into my language. So at some point that would hopefully get, become more positive and, not turn into ego or it's just that I am capable, I am worthy, I am,
Yeah. And speaking it over yourself does do volumes. Like for me right now, what I'm wrestling with is feeling like I'm being led to write a book. But personally, I don't feel I'm capable of that. I don't feel that my words are worth putting down on paper and putting all that effort in. But I feel like the Holy Spirit prompting me, Trissa, I have given you ability to be a writer, and I will help you. I will aid you on this. And you have to put one foot in and be willing to go against what's natural and what's normal for you, and trust me. And that trust is so hard, because I've come to realize, sadly, that I'm a person of little faith. I'm not very faithful. I'm very much dependent on me and what I know as safe. And that's a big struggle for me, is being faithful to trust the Lord. And so like when I felt that prompting in Turkey way back in October of last year, I was like, oh yeah, I'm so pumped. Like I feel a fresh wind, like let's go. And then I get home and I start writing. I'm like, this is all crap. And I didn't even show anyone it. I was just like distrusting immediately, just as quickly as I trusted everything that was put on my mind. And I'm like, why am I so like self-destruct? Like, why is that my immediate thing, is to not trust what I've like clearly felt and heard from the Lord? But I'm just like, no, I refuse. I'm just going to sit on my butt and twiddle my thumbs, because I don't believe that what I'm typing is worth. I'm like, and it just makes me feel like I'm hoarding like in my talents that I've been given. And I'm getting off track here, but
No,
I don't remember why I even brought that up, but I think we were talking about something regarding just like not trusting. Oh, it's because you were saying trusting the destructive thoughts, but it takes a fight is the point I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
There's a fight at every level because what you're wrestling with is a deeper, obviously, level, because you're fighting for your life and your identity as a whole. And me, I'm just fighting over whether or not to like put myself out there, and like failure and all that.
I think the process is the same though.
It is. That's like I agree 100%.
And I think that's why everybody's story matters, is because it affects you probably on the same level that it would affect me.
Yeah.
Even if I have more skills or more trauma. My trauma is no different, because your trauma affects you the same way my trauma affects me. And that's why it's easy to relate with people.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things, because I'm not supposed to do this. I don't know what the hell I'm doing at all with a podcast. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing.
But here you are, because
But
people need you here. And
there is that. And what I think I discovered, and I mentioned this a couple times on the podcast, is there's a book called The War of Art, and I don't remember the author, but the premise of the book is just show up and do the work. Every day, just show up and do the work.
Yeah.
And then what I discovered on top of that is And I call it resting in faith. So I showed up, I've done the work, I've done everything that I can possibly do, that I can even like concoct and come up with some sly way to make it work with audio and video, and because I don't know what the hell I'm doing at all.
Right.
And then figure out how to do post-production and stuff like that. But those ideas come because I'm resting in the fact that I've already shown up and done the work.
Yeah.
So the new ideas happen while I'm resting. And it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. And
awesome.
I can do that. And now I have an idea that I can actually research. And maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it's not, but mostly they're good ideas.
Yeah, no, I agree. Or else people wouldn't be listening. Like, people wouldn't be wanting more, and they wouldn't be commenting. And there's always more to say on these kind of topics because they're just not talked about.
Right.
People just aren't willing to be candid about, like, doubts. Like, even as a believer, it's like with the whole suffering thing, like, so many people come up and like have that question. And it's crazy because suffering across the world doesn't look the same, I don't think.
No, it does not.
Because different people define different things as suffering. Like, I think I've almost grown, and this is maybe not a great thing, but I've almost grown apathetic to the American view of suffering, because the American view of suffering typically means
financial.
I don't have enough. I don't
Right.
have what I want. And I'm like, you didn't get your hair colored this week? I feel so bad for you, But it's like, I know that to them, that's a need that they've been conditioned to have met. And so
Right.
it's like, when I see other people who are like, they're suffering, we would see them as like, wow, they are literally have nothing. They should be like A, B, and C, like trauma. They have trauma. They're like, I'm not in trauma. Like, they don't see themselves as having trauma. They just see their life for what it is. And they've learned to like have happiness and joy and contentment. And I think contentment is a key word for all of us to learn, but it's like hard to know what that looks like for all of us.
Well, we're afraid of contentment because that means we're lazy.
And or that means we have to stop striving.
Yeah.
But it's like, where does striving get us?
Yeah.
So there's a difference between like healthy pursuits and striving, but that's a different conversation. But I mean, yeah, I think that what I see that aggravates me, because it just goes against logic in my mind, is that people are very quick to accuse God of their suffering, but then when it comes to prospering and good things, they're very quick to thank themselves. And I'm like, it's either you're responsible for the things that are bad and good, or if God's responsible for your terrible things, then he might also be responsible for the things that bring tears of joy to your face, and like things that are just those moments that make you smile as well. It's like, it can't, that inconsistency, I think people are very quick to like, why God?
Oh, yeah.
Why God? But it's like, well, why were you blessed with kids? Why do you have these people in your life? Why do you think that this has happened? And like, the truth is just that I believe is that we'll never be able to see the greater picture. And that's what forces the struggle. Is like, God, you withhold information from me. You're so up there, all knowing and mysterious, but like, you need to drop your servant a hint down here because I'm in the thick of it, and I can't see a way out, and I don't see what good you are to me anymore. And it's like, that's, I think, just been the wrestle, is that we wrestle for control of sight. Like, I mean, that was why Adam and Eve bit the apple, because they wanted to know what God knew, right?
Right.
And so it's like, I think that's still the wrestle, is like, we're so frustrated because we don't understand it. Like, we don't understand the suffering. We don't understand why. And I think, yeah, it's a hard one.
Well, and that's why a lot of people walk away from the church.
Yeah.
There's
100%.
this misconception that if you pray about it, it will go away.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you pray enough about it, or if you do the right things. If there's a formula, it's the prayer of Jabez. If you do that enough, you're going to get rich. And it's
but that puts it on you, and it was never up to us.
Right.
And that's putting control back in your hands and saying, oh, if you do the right things.
Right.
But it's like, we're not capable of doing all the right things. We're not capable of praying all the right prayers. Like, that's just a false, like, yeah,
So well, I hate this. Almost seems like a bait, but I didn't mean it to be.
You're like, I'm gonna take advantage of that one. Reel her in.
Snag. Well, you might have got out of it because I think it just left the building.
Oh no. We were talking about praying and doing the right thing and how that will bring you to prosperity and how that's a false.
Yeah. So those people that, how do I put this? I don't know how to put it.
Are you saying like kind of what's the point then to prayer? Like if we're just gonna pray, but it's not up to our prayers anyway to change our circumstances?
Well, no, I think my mind got on a different track on that.
Okay, never mind.
I'm always in what's the point?
What's
realm.
the point?
What is the point realm?
Yeah.
No, I think I was getting off on something else. My mind's scattered a little bit on that today. So
no, yeah, you're good. But I do think it's like I want to know that I believe in the power of prayer. Like I've seen it work. I mean, I've seen the Lord use my faithfulness to pray for someone to like actually lead to like better things. And I don't know if it was because of my prayer. I don't want to like claim like, I did that. My prayer did that. My faithfulness. Because truly, I would have like, there are days where I'm like, I would prefer not to pray for this person.
Anybody want a card of faithfulness? I got a whole deck. I'll share my faith today.
Right, make it right. But no, like, yeah, I think, but I do believe that, like, I mean, it even says in the Bible, like, Jesus is sitting at the right hand of God, interceding on our behalf right now. Like, he's in a constant state of interceding for his people to the Father. And that's, like, so cool to think about. Like, even after he died, Jesus just went up to heaven and he started praying for us. I'm like, what?
He'd be like, this fool, he wants
in.
in.
Like, this fool need prayer. Oh, you definitely need my... He said, Lord, Father.
We got a couple fools down
there.
Yeah,
we got a whole lot of... But, yeah, so I think that there's definitely so much power in it because it takes the focus off of ourselves, and it really we imitate and we mimic like what Jesus did in the garden over his disciples, what he like that's what gave him strength on earth. And so I think it is like such an important spiritual discipline. But I don't know maybe what I believe as far as like how much power it has to like change your whole circumstances. Like,
well, what does it really say about prayer other than the Lord's Prayer?
Oh, well, we'd have to get into the word. I wish I brought my biblioteca, but I think it's not even necessarily what we see explicitly said about prayer, but how we see prayer being used and how we see like all these people who fall to their knees in prayer. It's like, why do they do that? Why does Jesus go and ask for his circumstances to be changed before he dies? Like literally, he's like, actually, if you could take this cup from me. It's like, I don't think we ever expected that from Jesus because it's like he knew dang well what he was coming to the earth to do. From the minute he had the consciousness to know, he knew that was his mission. And he seemed fine with it up until that point. And he's praying and he's like, but... not my will. Because, I mean, who knows? What if he never would have said, but not my will? Maybe he wouldn't have died. I don't know. I'm getting on a conspiracy theory.
I mean, the rabbit trails are what... Because there's so many people that grow up in the Christian faith that have walked away because of the misinterpretation of the Bible and more of the control.
Yeah.
That if you do pray, it'll go away. And if you are this, all you got to do is pray it away. And it just doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
And that's not how God works. And that's not how Jesus worked. Jesus was like, I'm going to enter into this and I'm going to walk with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
His reverence for people,
mm-hmm.
his love and care for people outweighed any judgment that he had for them in their current situation.
Right.
He's like, I just want to sit here with you and have the conversation.
Right. And it's like, I think it's important to say, like, he didn't just leave people as they were. Like, he didn't take the prostitute's hand and say, like, brush the dust off of her and be like, all right, go right back to what you were doing. Like, he cast the demons out of Mary Magdalene and he said, let's go live a new life. And then he took he took Matthew and he was like, you hate what you're doing right now. Your people hate you because of it. Let's pick a new life. Follow me. Like, he gave them an alternative, which was to turn to him, to set their sights on him, and to give everything they had to, like, walking alongside of him. Even though he took them to foreign towns and he sent them off in pairs and he said, don't bring anything with you. Just go with probably the disciple you most dislike. I'm going to pair you two up and you're going to go to this town and you're not going to bring a scrap of bread with you, but you're going to trust me when I tell you people will provide. It's like he put him through it. Like, he was not some easy rabbi to follow. He brought him into the sanctuary church of his time, even when he disagreed with everything that was being taught, pretty much, of like all the legalistic Judaic law of cleanliness. Jesus walked into that church and he was like, I'm
eating pork today.
I'm not leaving this church as it is, because it's corrupt. Yeah, he goes in there chewing on a big old pig leg, like, what we talking about? But that's what's so cool about Jesus, is he's just like, he's so about it, but like, he's about change in the most like purest way of just like doing it. Like, people listen to him because he did it first. Like, he put forth the change and within himself, and people saw that and they were like, I'm attracted to that. I want more of that, because it's true and it's real and it's radical. And yeah, it's just the Bible's a really cool book, but I can just see how a lot of texts and interpretations can get twisted. And even back to prayer, like, people see that Solomon prayed to God and God granted him something. And so it's like they interpret that as like, oh, if I pray for what I want,
right,
like, then but it's like, I believe that like the Lord answers prayer when you pray into his will and into his heart of like what prayer should be. Like, when we're just praying for ourselves, like, those things may happen, but I don't know if that's necessarily just God blessing you with what you want. I mean, that could be, you're working hard for it and so you're getting it. But I just think that there is a command as to how we should pray too, like praying into his will, praying into his heart, that we can see people, that we can be better than we were, made better than just like leaving us as we are, like a desperation almost, a seeking.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, just even recently, I would say I'm kind of entered into that. And what I mean by that, the result is that I'm a hell of a lot nicer person than I've ever been. Hell of a lot nicer. Yeah. But I view people differently.
Yeah.
But
that's the real.
It is. I had a paradigm shift, and I mean, I hated people. I hated Christians. I hated most everybody, really, and except for my select friends. But even them, I was staying away from, because not because I disliked them, but because of, then you get into the depression and the anxiety and all the stuff that you don't want to expose people to.
For sure. Yeah.
And now I'm this, like, every time I leave the house or interact with somebody, I'm in a intentional conscience switch to make sure that I am somebody that they came across that's pleasant that day.
You're interruptible, which is radical, because
Yes.
nobody's interruptible.
Yes.
Anymore, it feels like.
Yeah.
Everyone's on a schedule.
I like that. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm interrupting and I see it every time I make somebody smile, or I've interrupted their misery.
Yeah. It was so sweet. Like, the other day, I was walking in Kroger, and I call it the Crow Ghetto because it's like the ghetto Kroger. Like, all kinds of different people be in that Kroger. But I was walking, and this man who, like, clearly had, like, a mental disability, like, just wasn't all there. He, like, walked past me with his grocery cart, and we made eye contact, and then I kind of, like, kept walking, but like was turning my head, and then he just stopped, turned and looked at me, and he's like, "How are you doing today?" And I was like, "I'm good. How are you?" And he's like, "Good. It's my birthday today." And I was like, "Happy birthday." And he's like, "Thank you. You're the only person today that has told me happy birthday." And then he kept walking, and I'm just like, what a weird thing to have happen. But what a cool like lesson to just be like, people just need to be seen.
Well, they do.
But we're not willing to stop for a moment.
Well,
See 'em.
I'll tell you this, and being a traveler and on the road, and you get to experience different cultures within our culture, and the Midwesterners are not as nice as they think they are.
Oh, I know.
They don't
Yeah.
look at you in the eye. They don't talk to you. They don't say hi. They don't, like, if you run almost into them, then they'll pay attention. But that's it. So
If you get in their way,
yeah.
then they'll stop
Then they'll be like,
yelling.
look, this is not nice time. But I'm in Colorado. I've had so many people just, they're ahead of me, and they'll open the door, and they'll look me right in the face and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Are you okay? Like, are you going to kill me? Are you a serial killer? Do you want me to put the couch in your van for you?"
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not used to people being nice. I did an experiment on the trails here in this little town a couple years ago. I was like, I'm going to say hi to everybody that I come across. And that trail's busy.
Oh yeah.
One person said hi.
Dang. They were probably like, what the
I was like
heck?
1 out of 20.
Dang.
1 out of 20.
Well, and I think like in people's mind, they just make this excuse of like, well, if I'm not as bad as so and so, therefore I don't need to grow anymore because I can find someone else to compare myself to
Right.
and better myself against. And that is like, don't we all do that? Like we give an excuse for growth just because we see someone else doing worse. And so we're like, well, if we're doing better than that person, we're doing all right. But it's like, doesn't mean there's no room to grow.
Well, and if that's the case, then maybe you should be entering into the suffering with them. If you're in
yeah.
a great spot,
Yeah.
maybe it's time to like stand beside somebody.
Yeah. Maybe it's time to step on to their level
Yeah.
and understand why that's but it's like, yeah, like you said, people just aren't willing to be interrupted. If they're climbing, no one's getting in their way.
Yeah.
But it's like, what kind of society does that leave us with? What kind of people? Because
America.
at the end, we're not bettering each other. We're not better. And everyone's all for their own agenda and for their own prospering. And it's like, man, like, what if our New Year's resolution was just to like understand people better, to understand our neighbor better, to take one person that we had in our life that we didn't quite get why they had the beliefs that they did or why they acted the way they did, and we just sought to know and understand them better.
Yeah.
How
Just
cool would that
enter
be?
into community.
Yeah.
It's not your belief system, not
Intimate
their belief system.
community.
Just just start building a community
Yeah.
that, and it doesn't even have to enter into the same beliefs. Like I have so many friends that have walked away from Christianity, that are Christian, that are not Christian, that are agnostic, that are atheist. I mean, and I love all of them.
Yeah.
Their belief system doesn't hinder my belief system.
No, yeah.
Nor does it make me dislike them or judge them anymore.
Yeah. And it's just cool. Like, I mean, me and you are an example of that. Like, we don't have the same exact beliefs, but it's like we care about each other as people and are, because of that, are willing to sit across a table and talk without hurting one another.
Right.
Just openly, because we're willing to understand or seek understanding from the other person. And it's like, truthfully, I used to be super into apologetics and all that, and I don't think I'll ever believe that that's ever the way again.
I don't know what that is, but I ain't apologizing for nothing.
Well, I mean, it's just all about debate. It's just all about like, let me fight you into admitting I'm right.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, after just traveling the globe and just talking to people and them like being curious about what I had to say because they've seen me live it out, I don't think I'll ever fully believe that apologetics is the way to a better society.
No.
To like, because it's like, I want a goal of mine is to share my faith because I believe it's good news. And because I care about people, I want to share that hope, that good news with them. I don't do it out of like, I need to get a count of convictions. It's like, I genuinely want you to know why I have so much hope and joy. And this is why. But I'm also not going to force it on you.
Right.
But it's like people will naturally want to know when they see you live it out. And that goes for anything. I think if you're just like a person that's genuinely content, people will be like, why are you like not striving like me? Why don't things upset you like they upset me? Like they'll want to know, like just any good basic principle. Like if you're exercising it, people are going to want to, like if you're good at exercising, people will be like, why are you so disciplined? How do you get so disciplined?
Yep.
It's like you living it out is what attracts people to it, because they know that if you can walk it, like, then they want to hear you talk it.
Well, and I do, like, I had, I have this kind of distaste for, well, I used to have a pretty healthy distaste for Christianity. Mm-hmm. But I have friends that, well, you being one of those, that live out their faith system. Mm-hmm. And I have so much respect for that. How can you knock something like that? It doesn't matter if it's true or untrue or it doesn't agree with you or doesn't, they're living out something that's supposed to be beautiful, and they're beautiful people. Mm. And they're ridiculed for their faith because of the representation that some people know. But again, it goes back to, I think, what you said earlier, and it's just one person. Yeah. And they're acting out individually. Maybe you said that.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean,
that might have been my lunch.
That could have been. I'm like, I don't think I said those exact words, so I'm like,
I think it was at lunch. I'm at odds with my equipment at the moment. It's not making me very happy.
Oh well.
It's not cooperating, which means God's not cooperating.
Oh. Funny.
Not funny. We had a big talk about it today.
Oh God.
Well, if you want this shit done, you got to show up.
My word.
Because I don't really give a shit.
No, yeah.
But.
Oh man.
So, and this is the response I get: a bunch of static.
A bunch of static. Oh man. But yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit, and I don't know what the statement was, but I do want to. How do you justify somebody who's not had the opportunity to experience this? We're 2,000 years into this little Jesus thing, and several thousand years into Judaic practice, and the point was to spread the word and show people life, but so many people for thousands of years have not heard about this, don't know this quote unquote good news. And how does that play out if God knew them before?
Like, how can God know someone without them knowing him?
No, not. How are they supposed to experience the joy and beauty? Like, I find a beauty in my faith. Mm-hmm. I never have before until recently, but I do find it very beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's taken me a lot of time to get there, but how do you, maybe I'm just not asking the question right.
No, I think I understand, like, kind of what you're saying. Like, how is it that some people get the opportunity to know about him and others don't?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I would argue that there's a lot more people who know about him than you and I would think. Like, I think that there's this assumption that there's such a large unreached people group, and there will always be, there is an unreached people group, don't get me wrong, but is it
as large as what we think?
Right. Because when we were traveling, we kept hearing about all these crazy movements that were happening in the thick of like the Middle East, where some of the most radical, like anti-Christian movements were happening. And it's like where persecution was the strongest, the church was also the strongest. And it was just like, we were hearing these stories about people who had trekked to the furthest corner of their country just with like Bibles in their hands, spreading the news. And so And then for all the lack of what we can do as people, then you have God who shows up in dreams and just in crazy ways. Like, I mean, this isn't anything recent, but like even just how he spoke to Paul through the donkey's mouth. It's like God makes a way.
That was Shrek.
Okay. Shrek was inspired from Paul.
Paul was Shrek.
I never even thought of that, actually, but that's hilarious.
Paul was an ogre.
I will never be able to watch Shrek the same. But yeah, like it's just I think
God was Eddie Murphy.
And God was Eddie Murphy. Oh Lord. But like I just think that there are things happening that we have no idea. Like the expanse it's gotten to. And I think that's what really, the more you travel, the more you know. Like, and the more you like read like different things like Voice of the Martyr, Samaritan's Purse, like just those kind of magazines where people are really in the thick of it and they see the change that's happening. I mean, like, it's making a way. That's all I can say is that it's making its way. And some people don't believe that the Lord will come back until every ear has heard, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know where the
I
proof of that is. But
I don't either. I just listened to a book. It's called The Return of the Gods, and I can't remember the...
Oh, I remember someone talking about this. It might have been you.
Gosh, it was me. Like, it's amazing. Yeah, it's basically just a spiritual timeline of demonic principles and old gods and the return of those gods and significant landmarks, time frames that coincide with ancient worship.
Yeah.
So it's really incredible. I mean, if you're Christian based at all, it would be a great book to really consider reading. If you're spiritually based and you understand old gods, it's really a good book to read.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to read it.
It'll definitely change your perspective on end times and what is happening just in America.
Yeah. But all I can say is that I know, like, I can no longer be ignorant to know that it is on the move. Like, it is spreading and it is causing such an impact in some of the most isolated places and some of the most persecuted and war-ridden places. And I think knowing that and hearing the stories is what really gives me the charge that I have no excuse here in my comfortable America, in my comfortable church where we have a building and we can lift our hands and we can get into the mood and close our eyes because we have no fear of a bomb. I'm like, any moment that could all disappear.
Well, yeah, we're on the cusp of it. I think.
Yeah. And,
just government and
yeah.
Financially, I think America's on the cusp of
I think
not doing very good.
I think it's all about to get very real for us all over the world. Yeah. Like, if you have faith, you're going to have to start fighting for it, because I believe in no time at all, we're all going to be, like, whether it is socially, physically, and literally, we're all going to have guns to our heads with...
Well, it's already happening.
Well, exactly.
Politically, it's already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's COVID 101 right there. They did something. You couldn't travel without. They took our freedom.
Yeah.
You couldn't travel without getting this stupid shot.
Yeah.
And I'm a traveler, so I have to get the shot.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to go anywhere, I'm cornered. Yeah. If I want to go anywhere in the world, I have to get this stupid shot.
Yeah. And now you don't even need it.
And now you don't need it because it didn't work. And since 1999, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And they knew it didn't work. And they've been testing this for many years. This was I think it was a whole ploy to see what America would do. And what they did was it wasn't real. So now we're lied to.
Yeah.
And who's going to trust you now?
Yeah.
Like, America's not trustworthy.
No, I don't think, people in general, like it's hard to believe people in general are trustworthy at all, but especially people with power.
People with power.
Like,
And
Watch
Americans
out.
think they have power. Even with a little bit of money, they have more than
yeah.
most of the world.
Oh, for sure. And it's crazy to think how much, like, a person living in the O5, which of Fort Wayne, which is considered the hood and not a great neighborhood, how much richer, like, they're a millionaire in the eyes of so much of the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like, yeah, how much power we really do have. It's kind of scary.
Well, and that's I was going to go back to suffering. Suffering in America is very different than the world. I've experienced that. You've experienced that. Now, I've not been to Skid Row, but I've seen plenty of interviews and pictures that I could have a fairly good idea of what that's like. And the other day I was watching, I'm like, well, that's probably what Sodom and Gomorrah was like. Like, there's sex and murder, and it's pretty lawless, and you can, because and it's mental, like the mental health down there is unbelievable. It's just out of control, and we just keep littering our streets with it through this capitalist mentality and this lack of community, which is why we're in a detriment mental health wise too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that mental health in America seems to be what plagues us more than almost anywhere, because it's like
Getting
in other countries,
deeper and deeper.
Yeah, in other countries, people they can't really afford to focus on their mental health,
Right.
because they're too
Right.
worried about eating. They're too
yeah.
worried about not being naked and having a roof over their heads. And now, this is not to degrade like the mental health crisis in America, but it does speak volumes as to like why it's almost like we have nothing else to worry about, and so our minds then create problems within themselves.
Yeah.
It's like we're just problematic species. We just need problems.
Well, and
it's
like a snowball effect. I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that we have more access to any kind of drug that we want.
Oh yeah,
and it's affordable even for the homeless.
Yeah.
I mean, it's affordable for the homeless.
Yeah.
And that's what you see on all these interviews. It's like, okay, you're drinking liquor, you're smoking weed, smoking meth, shooting heroin. You have to have money from somewhere.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's what's so sad is that you see people take what money they can get and that's what they spend it on, or they steal from their families, they break relationships to get that money to get their fix. And that's like why you see drugs being such a disruptive, something that just strips everything away, because everything then becomes centered on that fix, and it doesn't matter what it takes to get it.
I know, but it still requires money, even if you
know.
give yourself away, because that's really all you have left is your sexuality or your body.
Yeah.
So once you give that away, you can only do that so many times.
Yeah.
Before you get something seriously, a disease that's irreversible.
Yeah.
And then the lifestyle is just horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, it just destroys people and I think that's where we're different from the rest of the world. Like, so when I went to Spain, there was this, everywhere I went, the homeless were maimed in some way. They, legless or born with crooked feet and they couldn't walk, or atrophy or paralyzed or didn't have a leg.
That's a lot of Guatemala too.
Is it? Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily mental health. Maybe mental health followed that. But the other thing, that was the other beautiful thing, the community took care of those people.
Yeah.
Like the Catholic Church was very adamant about, you can sit out in front of our church and beg for money.
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough, we got a bed.
Yeah.
And if it's not enough, we got food. But they put them out there so they could be part of society also.
Yeah, that is an interesting contrast, because if you drive down the street, you'll just see a relatively normal looking, usually male, middle-aged person standing with a sign saying, "I'm homeless, I need help." But then you see behind them, Taco Bell's hiring $20 an hour.
Right.
And you're like, why don't you just turn the other way and walk on over there? But then it's like, they can't, because there's something most likely mentally preventing them from being able to hold a job.
Yeah.
And so, that is an interesting contrast of we do have there's such a crisis here in America with the mental health and the homeless and just drugs, and but I guess you wonder what comes first, like the mental health problem or the drug. Like did having mental deficiency lead to people seeking out drugs, or did somehow people wind up with drugs and then that led to a mental deficiency? I don't know. I guess it's different for everyone.
Yeah, and it probably is. I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah. Tweaking.
I know it's different. I don't know, like, as I watch these interviews with people, and even the interviews I do, I experience a lot of sadness. And if I consume myself too much disgust with my faith, I experience some disgust there, which I think is understandable, because I don't understand suffering. I don't, even though I've suffered my whole life. Well, I don't understand why. I don't understand why that. I don't understand parents, actually. Even my own parenting. I mean, I know what happened, but how do you beat a kid?
Yeah.
Like, how do you sexually abuse a child? Why would you tell them you don't want them? I just can't wrap my head around this. Why, as damaged as I am and the environment that I grew up in, I don't want to transfer that.
No,
And
yeah.
even though I have in certain ways, I'm always working to not transfer that. And some people, they just don't care. They really just don't care.
Yeah.
And they transfer it willingly and gladly.
Yeah.
And you hear it all the time. I mean, I just heard a girl, same damn thing as my mom. Same thing. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
It's pretty crazy to know like how many, when it's like you just see all the kids in need of foster homes, all the broken homes, like even the amount of like divorce and like all that's gone up. It's like, why, like what's taken such a turn that the numbers are this high now? And yeah, it's pretty scary.
Well, and that it goes back to my earlier statement. I think we've gotten severely away from community.
Yeah.
And community is your foundation of what holds you stable when things go wrong. Nobody has a support system anymore.
Yeah.
And if you do, you're lucky.
Yeah. And you know why I think maybe part has to play into that is that people aren't willing to stand still in one place, to put roots down, to really surround themselves with community. And like that's my problem too. Like I'm always anxious of like, where can I get to next? Like, oh, okay, I just moved into a house and I don't know if I really like Fort Wayne. Maybe I want to move to Michigan. Maybe I'm like, why am I like this?
Right.
I'm like, because really sinking down somewhere and getting into a job that maybe you don't love, but it will sustain you. It will be consistent. And going to, in my case, like going to a church where I can like have people get to know me and pour into me and like check in on me and like being near to my family. Like I completely agree with you. Like I think that community is a very lost term. We don't care about it anymore. It's like, what can community get me? Well, it will get you stability for one.
It'll get you food, and it'll get you rest, and it'll get you a warm place if you need it.
And I think people are scared of community because it also can get you accountability.
Right.
And we don't want to be held accountable to anything. No. We don't want people to get too close. Yeah. And it's like, well, like accountability is part of growth, and it's part of that challenge to our intrusive thoughts. Like part of that, like I just like, and this is a subject that's touchy, I'm sure, but like pornography, like I think there's so many porn addicts who don't want to be porn addicts, but they are because they never told anyone.
Right.
It's like you have to put it into the light, because when anything, whatever it is, lying, infidelity, whatever it is that you're wrestling with, whenever suicide, whenever like you're doing now, bring it into the light, it will lose its power because you're able to expose it and rip it apart. But people are afraid to do that with their demons. They're afraid to do that with what they're wrestling with. And that's why we are breeding brokenness, because we don't have community that's willing to get dirty anymore.
Yeah. Everybody's protecting themselves and trying to get this positive, all these positive mentality, which is great. And if you do it, but you can't stay protected if you've got it.
Yeah. No, for sure. 100%.
There's too many people suffering if you are a solid individual that need it. And most people aren't willing to enter into that because it messes with their chi. They don't know how to.
Their chi. Their flow. Oh my, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people be like, I just can't. I just can't. Like, boundaries. I just can't. And it's like, boundaries are important. Girl, I'm not going to lie. Boundaries are important. But also, you be setting up a whole Lego brick house with how many boundaries you build. Like, you only maybe need half those boundaries.
Right.
Like, because at some point it comes from... I'm building myself in so that no one can mess up, like no one can have an impact on me. No one can like tell me I'm wrong, to like, okay, I've tried with this person and I've tried to get to like a healthy, but it's just not getting there. And now I'm going to put a boundary because like I still care about that person and like we've fought to make it healthy, but it's just not.
Right.
And that's some parents, even with their children, and like children have to put boundaries up with their parents because their parents just don't know how to have healthy relationships. But it's like just to not even try with someone, like and be like, I just can't. It's like, okay, well, Miss High and Mighty or Mr. High and Mighty, whoever is being high and mighty, I'm like,
which I think there are times in life where you probably shouldn't. Like if you're coming out of a trauma situation, you're trying to create peace in your life.
Yeah.
You probably need a couple years.
Yeah.
Don't stay there.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to get back in the thick of it to number one, strengthen your own trauma. But because you're facing it in many different ways and even in somebody else, but to help somebody else out of theirs.
People are worth it. It's like people will always, I mean, and I know it's taking you a while to believe that, or not a while.
My mind went, but I'm not.
No. Stop talking.
Maybe I'm not people.
No, but they are like, and like, see, you don't believe you're worth it, but I, as your friend, believe you're worth it. And it's like other people who love you believe you're worth it. And it's so, I mean, even if we don't believe it for ourselves, like,
well, that's what I'm saying. I have to believe you that I'm worth it.
Yeah, which is a hard thing.
But hopefully that will eventually transfer into the manifestation that I am worth it.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll believe that, and I think that is what is happening.
Yeah, it's become a popular word, manifest.
Manifest, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that lately, and I'm like, what do you mean by manifest? But I've learned it's just like, saying something until it's true. Yeah.
What was it? Absorb it. It was one of my interviews. She had said something similar to that, but I really liked the way she said it. I can't remember. You'll have to listen to the other interview.
I will. Yeah. Do you remember who it was?
Yeah, it was Kara.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was on the what is it? Oh, cancer, suicide, and the fight for life is the name of the podcast.
Gotcha. Yeah,
that's Kara.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, I think
metabolize.
Metabolize
it.
Oh, yeah. Like ingest it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was told when I was in Guatemala and I was listening to a guy who had lived in the Middle East. He was like, when I read the word, I don't just read it. He's like, I eat it. He's like, I take it and I like ingest the words.
Rip the pages out.
Like, and just shove it in But it's like, he was truly like, I don't care about reading a lot or how much I read. He's like, I just care about whatever I do read, that I'm really like communing with the Holy Spirit in that moment. Like I'm praying, what do you want to show me with this? Because I believe all your word is living and breathing. So I don't just want to read it because I want to gain life from it. And like just like when you eat and you gain energy and life, I want to be eating your word, Lord. And so I was like, that's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to, instead of opening up to where I have my little tab saved and be like, okay, I need to read a chapter and I need to read a chapter. I'm like, okay, who cares if I read a chapter? Maybe I just read a few verses, but I want to ingest it. I want to eat it. And I think whether you're eating the word of God or eating up like self-affirming proverbs of some other nomad or guru or whatever it is that you're ingesting, make it positive, make it life-giving.
Yep.
Because it's going to change your perspective, not just of yourself, but of the world around you. It's going to be good.
Well, yeah, I was going to say I disagree and agree, but I don't disagree. I've ingested a lot of books over the years, even the Bible and counseling and all that stuff, and it really has come to fruition slowly. But more predominantly even recently. So all those things that I've been doing for years are just now starting to shine through.
Yeah. It's not always immediate, which is what's rough.
Yeah. And this is since I was 18 years old I've been doing this.
Right.
Like intentionally trying to better who I am and not live out what my parents were, mostly my mom.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is I did become part of that. I did transfer some of that, especially the anger and the rage. And I know where it came from, but getting rid of anger is a whole different story.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just pray it away. You can't just talk yourself out of it. You can't just read a book and it's gone. And you can't just do simple exercises and it's okay.
You have to really wrestle with that.
Like anger is it's a horrific thing that, I mean, it took everything from me. It's much like alcoholism in a lot of ways. Like alcohol and drugs will take everything from you. And that's exactly what rage did for me.
Yeah. I deal with anger on I would assume a little bit of a smaller scale, but I deal with, I should call it irritability. People can irritate me like so quickly, too quickly, over any dumb little thing. And it's so sad to watch myself quickly shift from a happy, kind, caring person to get out of my face. I don't even want to be around you because you're just annoying me that much. And I'm like, that is so it's so destructive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do I not have a handle on this? And I may never, but it's like, it's something that I have to wake up and every day before I even feel the emotion, I have to like tap into, okay, I'm going to struggle with this today. How am I going to respond? It's like, I have to prepare myself to go to battle with that emotion, with that part of myself.
Yeah.
Because I encounter it when I'm not expecting it. And if I encounter it when I'm not expecting it, I'm going to hurt somebody.
Right.
And I'm going to hurt myself. And so if I can somehow prepare myself for what I'm going to feel, maybe not even that day, but like later that week, and just continue to wake up and be like, okay, like how am I going to face this when it comes? How am I going to talk myself down? Like it does help. But I hate having that. I hate that part of myself. It's like that little devil on my shoulder that just wants to get burst into flames over every dumb thing. And I'm like, that's not even worth it. Like it's not worth it. Why am I so upset? So we all have something.
But isn't that because I do the same thing with my anger. I mean, I wake up and I'm like yesterday it started and I'm like, this better not continue, and it's continued through today, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like what do I need? I just even though I'm angry, I'm still treating people really well because I know that's going to be the end result. Like that's what's going to get me out of this negative process that I'm in. And it's usually coming up on travel days. Travel days are hard. So
Yeah.
Just getting packed and loaded and destination and the in between, and I mean it's hard. So I get frustrated pretty easy because I generally forget something, or I can't find something, or it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Or I've left something back where I'm living and thought I brought it with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but that's, I think I consciously, like the other day, it was New Year's Day. And typical Midwesterners, they don't look at you and they don't acknowledge you, and they definitely don't say Happy New Year. So So I'm in the store and I'm just
Oh,
like,
geez.
I just need to just make somebody's day. Like, this is what's going to help me today. I just want to make somebody smile. That's very easy to do if you smile at somebody and say hi. That's it.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, hello.
That's all I
Somebody-
did with this man was walking by me. I was like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, good. How are you? I was like, Happy New Year. He's like, Happy New Year.
He's like, oh.
He got excited. I was like, okay, you're not all bad.
Yeah. You're like,
You're in your 70s though, so you've got to figure it out.
oh. Yeah. No. It's like, that's the thing. It's like there's so much darkness, but then it's like there's those moments of light where it's like humanity, man. It's like we're unlike anything else. Like we are the biggest force of evil, but also the biggest force of what's beautiful in this world.
Well, yeah, it's. I think that's what I was trying to say just a second ago. But I said earlier is I'm walking in the darkness and the light
Yeah.
simultaneously,
Yeah.
and I think that's okay. I'm also walking in contradiction.
Yeah.
Well, don't agree with it.
How is that? No, I'm saying like I can see how contradiction, it's a part of all of us to a degree.
Yeah.
Like I feel that when you say that because I've experienced that for myself. But how does that look for you? Like when you say that, what do you
The
mean?
biggest thing is I'm doing a podcast and going to take my life.
That
I'm
is a
doing a
big
podcast
yeah.
to save lives, and I'm going to take mine.
That is a big
It's a
contradiction.
huge contradiction.
Yeah.
But there's reasons for it. And there's, and not all the reasons are good and not all are valid. But I think I'm I'm simultaneously walking in the darkness and the light all the time. And I've just accepted that. And it just maybe it's just a choice of how I'm going to react to life while I'm walking in that. So am I going to react poorly, or am I going to react and try to help somebody smile today? And that's the difference. But so I get to experience this joy or this frustration, depending on my reaction to the outside world and myself. It's really interesting. I've never been really in that position before, so
That is interesting.
the darkness has always had its way with me, per se.
Not today.
Not in a good way either. Not-
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction.
No. Yeah. It's an interesting, like, and I'll never fully understand you because I'm not you and I don't feel the things you feel or see things the way you do. So it's just interesting to hear like where your mind takes you and what your daily struggle looks like. As we all have one. It's just different for all of us.
Yeah, so I'm kind of doing this backwards, but why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you grew up and kind of where you came from and
Where that's led me?
yeah.
Well, yeah. So born into ideal white mother, father, household, well-off family, big family. So very
Yes.
community oriented,
Yes.
very much almost too many people in your business. Or some people don't have like enough. I had too nosy grandmas and all the nosy cousins, and I was like, okay. And I remember young life being pretty good for the most part. I remember I was very obnoxious child. I don't know why. I think I had a lot of energy. And I just had a lot of enthusiasm, and I wanted people to know it. And so, yeah, I do remember, I think the darkest parts about my childhood were probably being afraid of my dad. He also has struggled with anger a lot in his life, just reacting to things in a very emotionally strong way that wasn't necessary. And just so I think as far as like when I have negative thoughts, it's usually from my childhood. It's usually from being afraid of my dad or just feeling like I did something so wrong when really I didn't. I'm a kid. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to drop things. I'm going to like get into things, but it's like feeling like I was just not Like I was just condemned for like really minuscule things. Like, okay. But yeah, and then, high school just went through super big rebellion phase. Like not really, and it was in a certain way because high school I was like super good kid, like played sports, was like involved, like didn't drink or do drugs or like I did all the on paper the good kid stuff. I went to church. I was super involved in youth group, and I loved my church, and I had a strong faith, but I hated my parents. Like my external actions were looking good, but my heart was bitter and disgusting. And it was like
Why do you think that was?
I think that a lot of it was struggle for power and control. I hated being told what to do. I hated being told no. Like when I wanted something, like if I felt like I was entitled to it and my parents denied me of that and didn't give me a reason, it just made me so angry at them. Like my mom did that to me all the time, where she would be like, no, I won't let you. And I'd be like, can you tell me why? And she'd be like, no, I don't need to. I'm your mom. I get to say no whenever I want. And I hated that. It felt like I was being like the authority was being abused. Like it was like, what makes you think that you just get to control that for me? So very like fairness and justice oriented when I was younger. And in my high school years, I had a big heart for like human trafficking prevention. I still do. And I think that's because like just the way I'm designed, the way I'm wired is I hate oppression. Like if I feel like someone's being oppressed against their will, being forced into anything, that just drives me nuts. It's the one thing that just grinds my gears more than anything else. And I think as a teenager, feeling denied and quote unquote oppressed by my parents for minuscule things, it made me so angry because I was like, this manifests itself in the world in greater ways. And here my own parents are in my house doing it in smaller ways, but it's still like the principle's the same. Like just taking just because they can. Like, just as a hormonal teenager, just like everything was made a big deal. But yeah, I mean, had good high school years, good friends, was just though a very angry individual because of my parents, and tried to run away, I think a couple times, but didn't quite make it past the neighbor's field because then I was like, what am I doing? Like, where am I going to go? Like, am I going to go beg on the streets? Like, I don't know what to do with myself. So just, yeah, had emotional blowups. I remember one time I was a pretty good artist. I still can be when I practice, but I drew a self-portrait of myself in art class, and it was very well done. And I brought it home, and like everyone admired it. And one night after a fight with my mom, I went up to my room, I took that self-portrait, and I just drew on it in red ink, like all the hate that I had, I just wrote it out onto that portrait. And I wasn't angry at myself, but I needed to punch a bag. I needed to scream into a pillow. That was my outlet. Like I was just writing hateful things towards my mother, but on my self-portrait. And then
it kind of makes sense to me, actually.
Yeah, maybe. But so anyway, I do that.
It's the things you absorb.
Yeah. And so I do that, and I roll it back up, and I put it in my closet, and that helped get my emotions out. Well, months later, my mom was looking in my room, finds that portrait, finds all the things I wrote, and instead of talking to me about it, anything, she gets so angry at me and tells me I need to cover those things up with the cross. I need to paint colors on them, and I need to write nice things. Because that's what logically makes sense, to just like make it all go away in a hormonal teenager. Just cover it up with nice things. I'm like, yeah, let's not talk about the issue. Let's not address it. Let's just, and I don't know if she thought, I don't even know if she thought like I could have been suicidal. I don't know, because she didn't realize that those words were meant for her. Like, because they were on my portrait. And so I think she may have thought, oh, Trissa hates herself. I'm like, no, I hate you.
Right.
But this is, so yeah, that's just an interesting side story. But built a better relationship with my parents in college because I was able to get some distance.
Okay.
And I think that helps everyone, whenever you have that. And still didn't really want to be around them. I always had to give myself a mental prep talk when I went home because I just knew that there would be things they said that would trigger me and it would just turn into a fight and I would want to leave immediately. So college kind of became my safe haven where I could really have the freedom to explore like my thoughts and like and challenge the things that I had grown up being told. And yeah, that led me down some pretty interesting paths. Where I met you, actually, where I started working, Cerulean. Worked there for almost 5 years in college and became a person that I didn't like in that time. And it's because I rejected accountability. I kind of pushed away the people who would challenge what I was trying or experimenting on because I had never gotten the freedom to experiment or try these things before. And so I wanted to just because I could. And it didn't get me anywhere. And it turned out that, everything I'd been told about those things was true, but I still needed to discover that for myself.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, college kind of walked away. I didn't walk away from my faith, but I definitely was not behaving in a manner worthy to hold the title of Christian. Like I didn't care about sanctification or holiness or any of that. And I lost caring about reading scripture, praying. Like I was like, who cares? And so, yeah, then always had a desire to go on the world race, which is a year-long journey to several different countries where you basically serve those people. Because even though I kind of let God go, my heart for justice never left. I still was like, I want to get involved with helping people somehow.
Yeah, I've always felt the same way.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is weird. It's like, where did that come from? And so I think whenever I started getting back in tune with, because I did some things that were very self-destructive, and that made me kind of hit a rock bottom in a sense where I'm like, I don't want this for myself. I want better things. And when I hit that point is when I reached back out, tried to reconnect with family, old friends, got back into the word, got back into prayer. Even though I felt so shameful, I was like, who am I to be returning to this? Felt like the prodigal woman, like I was like, I've just been sleeping with the pigs for the past 3 years, and who am I? But I'm like, they say if you are who I believe you to be, and if you are who people say you are, which is a God of grace and mercy, then you'll want me back. And he did. And he showed me that because of how much he revealed to me and wrecked me whenever, because I left for the world race, which was a big step. Because I didn't really feel like I was worthy to be a missionary after everything I had just stepped out of. I didn't even know that's what I was doing. But that is what it in essence was.
Yeah.
I was literally leaving it all behind for the sake of serving the world like Christ did. And that's what a missionary is. And so I did that, and my life got completely changed, and my perspective, how I see people, what I want out of life, completely changed. And so that was, I think, the biggest turning point for me. And so for me, it wasn't the way I see it is not that I am who I am because of how I grew up or because of the resources I was given, but it's because I chose to say yes to that hard decision to leave everything that I had known, my comfort zone, and chase after something that I felt was right, to go after and put myself through something that was so hard, the hardest thing I've ever done. But it changed me. And
the world race was hard?
Oh, yeah.
Was it?
Living with 26 strangers, being forced into a system, because the world race, it was a system. There was a system to it. Yeah. Did not always agree with the system, but had to go along with the system for a year. You had to, call each other higher. And I was not a fan of that, where we sat in a circle every day and told each other how we could look more like Jesus. And I was like, I believe in iron sharpening iron. I believe in bringing things up to one another. I don't believe in forcing it.
Right.
Because then you just get bitterness and, oh, look at me. Like, I'm finding a flaw in all of you. That just means, like, I have such good insight. Like, people would, that would cause competitiveness. And I could see the danger in that. So there was just a lot of things that were really hard for me to sit through. But, the Lord really showed up.
Are you glad you did it?
I am 100% glad I did it. I think I would be, I don't think I would have mentally, spiritually matured the way I did had I not gone. It was hard, and I questioned a lot of things about myself and the world around me, and that it was a lot of new discovery, but it definitely was a good kind of challenging.
That's good.
Kind of challenging. You can walk away from being like, well, I'm so much more capable than I realized. My faith is so much more durable than I realized it was.
Isn't that something? That's a good word for that.
It was, because I was like, I had fragile faith. And then I walked out of that. Well, and I know earlier I was saying I was pretty faithless, but I meant that in a form of trust. Like I don't trust. But I do believe that after the things I've seen, my faith in essence has grown grit. Like, it's grown callous. It can withstand a lot more than it used to be able to.
Yeah, I would agree with that one, with mine as well.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, I didn't go seeking this.
No, but that's the crazy
but it did show up. Well, I say that, but I've been seeking it my whole life.
Yeah.
And it finally
speaked through.
Yeah, it finally broke through the very, very thick membrane.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of years to do that, but it's through willingness, it's through suffering, it's through uncomfortable with who you are.
Yeah, you have to get really, I had to question who I was so many times on that. Like, is this right? Is this what I believe? And even now, like, re-entering back to America, I had to analyze, okay, what part of me feels a little, and this is a strong word, but it's the only word I know how to use right now, brainwashed from that system. Like, what part of me feels like this is right just because I've been in it a repetitive motion for the past year?
That's the indoctrination process.
Yeah, what part of me feels indoctrinated, but this isn't like a genuine belief or value of mine.
Right.
It's just been indoctrinated. So I've had to fight through that. Like, yeah, it's a lot.
I struggle immensely with the indoctrination process. It's very offensive to me. And I think I recognize it easier now than I did when I was younger. And it's probably because of language. It's the Christian language. But any indoctrination process is difficult for me, because I'm like, why are you trying to conform me to this when my skills can produce this?
Yeah. Because I think, like, when we hear indoctrination, we only think of religion.
Right.
But it's like, the truth is that indoctrination is in every
Yes.
thing.
It's in your job. It's in your faith system.
It's in our
your
politics. Yeah. It's in, like, all these bandwagon movements.
Yeah.
It's all, like, people like to think they're exempt. I'm like, sorry, but everyone's putting their faith in something. Everyone is indoctrinated into something. But it's all what are you putting your faith in? Who are you putting your faith in? And who are you willing to expose yourself to opposing things to really test to see if your theory, if your values, if your doctorate holds up? Whenever, like, push comes to shove, is what you're saying gonna, like, withhold against, like, logic and reality? And yeah, just the challenges that are out there. Because I think a lot of people kind of kid themselves, and they don't ever put themselves out there to, like, see if it actually will crumble underneath them, because they're afraid it will.
Right. Well, even your parents indoctrinate you into their own belief system and what they think you should and shouldn't do, and how you should and shouldn't do that. And it's like, okay, now I'm a teenager or an adult, and what's true for me? Because at some point you got to start making decisions for yourself, and that usually happens in your teens. But It's like, what part of this is me and what part of this is not who I want to be.
Right. And so it's not that indoctrination in essence is wrong, because I do think that there's good things about sharing our beliefs and our ideas.
Oh, yeah,
and
for
like
sure.
it's just when that becomes the only,
When that becomes the judgment system.
or if it only comes from one source,
Yeah.
that's when it gets
But
dangerous.
even that system of, I think that's actually pretty good. It becomes that system of judgment that you judge yourself against, but actually how other people judge you against that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you figure out who you are in that belief system, now you can judge yourself against that.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't judge yourself harshly. You're just like, I don't want to watch porn anymore because it's not part of this
Yeah.
thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't line up with this, who I say I am,
Yeah.
who I believe I am, and I'm actually looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, I don't need to look at that stuff. I can
Right.
actually be who I want it,
Well, right.
who I
And
expect to be.
people could say, like, because honestly, if you watch porn, you might be like in the TV show Friends, porn was a celebrated thing. Like, they watched
Right.
it together. It was a common thing, and it still is. Like, people have, what is it called, OnlyFans and like all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And so it's like you're not going to be condemned for that. But if you actually look at the effect, the reality
The effect is.
that it's having on your brain, you will quickly see that it is something that should be condemned by a mentally stable world. Would say that is hurting you.
Yeah.
It's hurting billions in the
them.
industry. It's creating a problem in it's creating a high consumer basis in the sex trafficking industry.
Yes.
It should be condemned. However, we're mentally skewed and think
Let's celebrate it.
Yeah, let's celebrate it because we're getting pleasure and instant gratification out of it. Screw what the long-term effects are. Screw how it's hurting these other populations that can't do anything about it.
Right.
Because it's about me.
Yeah.
And so that's where, it's just that's where people won't put it up against they won't bring it out to the light, because when push comes to shove, your whole ideology that porn is somehow good and beneficial for you, it's going to crumble against
Right.
science and the facts that it's
Well,
not.
and, I used to, a friend of mine used to say it's a single man's best friend. And, or what he used to say? Oh, it's God's gift to the single man.
Oh, wow.
That's what it was. And it's actually not.
It's
actually
not. No, yeah. I'm passionate about that. If you couldn't tell, I was like getting a little fiery there because I've just seen.
Well,
seen that.
there's interviews I'm watching. There's 3 or 4 that I've come across that were sex trafficked.
Mm.
And it's horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
I mean, what it does to somebody, it's a lifelong damage
Yeah.
that they can't get away from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what pedophilia does. It's basically walking murder
Yeah.
is what it is. You've just taken somebody's life
Yeah.
and destroyed it while you get to go and get your little pleasure cruise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah. It's blood curdling to think what our evil is capable of, what our minds are capable of.
gosh.
I'm like, I can't fathom the amount of darkness that's in our minds, what we're capable of, what's in my mind. It's like I'm afraid of
know.
my own mind. It's like, because like you said, our hearts and our true and desires, the desires that go surpass our animalistic ones, because I feel like we have
Yes.
different levels. We have the desires that our body wants, but those aren't the desires necessarily we want. And at our core, like our body can take over, our animal instincts can take over our human ability to logic and reason and say no, because
Right.
that's not healthy for me. And when you allow that unhealthy or that more, I should call it unstable instinct to continue to you say yes to that time and time again, then that eventually is going to be what owns your logic and owns your reasoning. Is the impulse, is the instant gratification. And that's even happens with electronics.
Oh, that was good. The impulse actually is the controlling factor
Yeah.
of that stuff. So I do like that. That's that's interesting. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to close this up.
Yeah.
This may take another hour, but
How long have we been talking?
1:45.
Oh, okay.
So knowing me, knowing my path, you've been one of my biggest supporters financially and on social media. And knowing the path that I'm going down, what was your initial response to that? It still stands true today, but it seems like, but what was your initial response to me? Do you know where I'm going with this?
Like when I looked you in your eye and I told you God's not going to let you die?
No. I know that was your initial response.
I know. That's why I was like, is that what you mean? What do you mean?
Just because one of the things that, well, it's kind of a twofold here. So I had friends that walked away that were Christian.
Oh, okay.
That told me I was going to hell, told me I was a coward, blah, blah, blah. You did not do that. And another friend of mine who was actually my friend and pastor for 30 years did not do that. They, both the responses were, I mean, you have a different belief system behind it. And you don't think it's going to, God's going to show up and that's not going to happen. And that's okay. His was, I don't know if this is going to come to fruition, but if it does, I just want to walk beside you.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much your kind of response.
Yeah. So you want me to like rehash what my thoughts were in that moment, like when you told me? Well,
because you're what? You're 20.
I'm 24.
24.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, I've never really had someone in my life that was so openly suicidal or like was open with me about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like this is a new subject to me. I'm not super educated on
well, that's what makes your response so curious.
Yeah, I don't really know, but I think so. You were one of the first people I had met with after coming off the race. And so that response was one of the first things that I encountered being back in America. And I think I think what helped my response from being so shocked or just like from being, I don't know, reacting negatively is that it resonated with things that I had heard people say overseas or what I had felt from people, like that level of just like pain and like I don't get the point of like what all this is. It's like I've talked to people about this. Like I get it. Like you're not the only one. And so for me, I didn't want to react like, oh my gosh, this is such a shock factor. You're the only, how dare you? Because I'm like, the truth is a lot of people wrestle with the feelings, maybe not to the extreme you do, or maybe to a more extreme, but of just like, what, like, I don't see a conceivable like end. And so therefore, like, what's the point? And I'm like, I get it. Like I can, like, I don't personally like view life that way, but I have run into so many people who do. And so I just wanted to know more, honestly. And yeah, like I told you, I had a very strong peace. Like I feel like I was physically not allowed to freak out because I just didn't feel like this was the end for you. And that's why here we are. I don't know how many months ago that was. It feels like
almost
6
well,
months.
Well, it was about 5 months now. Yeah.
Well, and I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, in that moment, I think your intent was to end your life like pretty relatively soon after we had that conversation. Mm-mm. Okay. Mm-mm. Okay. I guess I didn't know.
I haven't made it to that point yet.
Right. And see, and I didn't really know what all like it was going to entail for you. And I still like, of course, would love to believe and hope that God's not going to let you die. Like, I believe that he's showing up for a reason now that he has, and all those things. And maybe it does all come to fruition. I don't know. Like,
Right.
I'm alongside you. I don't know. But what I do know is that I was just grateful that you had told me, and I was grateful that you had sought me out to say goodbye, as you had said. And I was like, all right, well, if this really is the last time I see you, then I'm not going to let this last time be a time of condemnation and like my ignorance of the subject and my ignorance of how you're feeling like ruin the friendship. Because it's like, the truth is that I am ignorant to like the feeling and like what and your circumstance, because I don't feel those things. So it's like
Right.
my own, and I think people's ignorance and fear of like their uncertainty with the subject leads them to lash out, leads them to fearful responses because they just don't know how else to handle it. But it's like, just ask questions. Like,
But, a lot of people can't have the conversation.
yeah, because it's hard, because then they have to sit with discomfort or uncomfortable emotions.
And they might have to actually look at themselves.
Yeah, maybe. And that might be, because I think that there's a lot of people who have thoughts of like, is this worth it? Like, for me, it's never, like, for me, it's more taken the form of like, if I were to die, like if someone were to kill me, I wouldn't really care.
Right.
It's not like I want to go kill myself. It's more like I don't really care if like this all ends tomorrow, because like I've grown apathetic to my fleshly self and to this existence because I know it's limited. And I'm like, what's the point of putting so much stock in something so finite, But then I have to like realize that the reason, I am getting off track here, but it's like, for me, it's like, then I have to realize that that there is rhyme or reason to why I'm here, and that there is people to impact, and that there is beauty to be found and joy to be had. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I can't really explain to you why I respond the way I did. It just was it just felt natural to just like be like, okay, never heard that one before. Why is that?
Put that one on the chalkboard.
Let's put that one on the chalkboard. I have now officially come into contact with that one, ladies and gentlemen. I was like, because that was the last thing I thought I'd be talking about when I came back, and especially with you, because you always, from my perception, seemed like a happy, like go lucky person, which you are, like a happy go lucky person, but you didn't seem like you were having that deep of an internal struggle, because I guess we didn't get to that level of conversation.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that depth.
Yeah.
That I have, because they can't have the conversation. It's like, well, what are you feeling? Well, I feel like I want to die today. And then they shut off. And it's like, no, you don't. No, actually, I do.
Yeah, I think
they can't get past the no, you don't. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking about this with my trainer the other day, how I was like, to me, I'm like, the amount of people that are shallow, like they're not willing to like have a conversation that makes them think. That number has grown so much. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, if you're not willing to even give me the attention of like 5 minutes, like you can't even talk to me for 5 minutes without distract. I gotta go distract myself.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
You're not worth my time. Like, you are worth my time, but like, it's just like kind of like,
it's not enjoyable.
It's not enjoyable. Yeah. I'm like, I'm having to fight for this more extensively than I should, because you are flippant to anything that is not just like easy cruisy.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, yeah, and
I can't be bothered with that.
I can't be bothered. I'm like, okay, well, what can bother you then? Nothing. Like, yeah, that's the thing. People are just like, it's like everyone's super apathetic to like. Everyone's just so easy to accept everything and so easy to be. But it's not like they're even really accepting it. They're just like choosing not to think about it.
Yeah, it's
That's
willful ignorance. Is
yeah,
what it is.
Everyone, there's so much willful ignorance of like, oh, I don't really get this, but I'll just accept it to make nobody
Yeah.
mad. Like, it's like we're
Yeah.
afraid of confrontation, but confrontation can
Healthy
be a really healthy, yeah, healthy
confrontation.
confrontation can be a really edifying, good thing. And it shows you who your real friends are. And it,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's really, yeah, I love it. But I know I'm a weird one out.
Yeah, so, well, a friend of ours, at least a friend of mine that we mutually know,
Mm-hmm.
and I've said this several times, she's like, when, and it's helped me a lot, and that's, people have kind of walked away because of this path. They don't really understand it, and they can't have the conversation with
Mm-hmm.
me, even though they've been close friends for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And I was really hurt over that. I was angry. I was pissed, like angry, like, two fingers in
Yeah.
the air, just like,
Yeah.
fine, you know. And she was like, the way I view that is that they've served their purpose and I've served my purpose in their life, and they've served theirs in mine. And that's so, like, because these last moments, these last few months or short conversations that I've had don't define the last 30 years. They don't define the last 12 years, the last 5. They were good relationships. They were
Yeah.
good people, and I am going to miss them, and I do love them. And it's okay that they can't have the conversation. And I feel kind of bad because I would love to have a genuine goodbye, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it is. It's just okay that they're not part of that.
Mm-hmm.
They just couldn't be part of it right now.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful, I think. Takes a lot of judgment out of it for me.
Just to be able to, like, look past that momentary, like, dismissiveness and be like, okay, well, you couldn't handle the reality in that moment because you don't understand it, but you have loved me for however long I've known you. We've shared so many good memories, and I'm not going to let this one moment take
Right.
away from all of that.
It's not the definition of the relationship.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's just a really sweet perspective that I think if a lot of us, like, in moments of anger, we're able to, like, step outside of that anger and, like, see the bigger picture, we would all have, like, longer lasting relationships. But I think, like, pride gets in the way, and, like, just unwillingness to apologize or say I'm sorry. Like, not that you should have to apologize for speaking truth, but like in other situations where just pride and anger take over and people aren't willing to look past that moment.
Right.
It's really a sad thing.
Yeah.
I've done that, and it's like, man, and that's why I hate my irritability part so much, because I'm like, oh, you've cost me things.
Yeah, but you recognize a problem, and that's what I'm a big proponent. If you can recognize a problem, you can solve it.
Yeah.
Like,
Amen.
and so I think that's one of the most beautiful things that you can do is pay attention to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can recognize the discomfort or the thing that's holding you back, then you can reroute. You
Yeah.
can redirect yourself. You can have somebody help you redirect. Like,
Yeah.
but you have to be willing to look at who you are.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have any closing advice, statements,
Oh,
anything you would like to tell the
Tell me.
world of suicides,
Oh my God.
my people?
Well, yeah,
How
I
can,
mean,
can you set my people free?
Moses. I can definitely not do that. Only one person can do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thankful that I got to be a part of this. And like I said, it's crazy to think that I had no knowledge of this world, of this, like, group of people that really struggle, because I'm more on the side that struggles with a lot of anxiety, but I've never really struggled with depression. But
Sure.
so and also growing up, that was very dismissed. Like, mental health wasn't a thing. You're just overreacting is what it was. So I think it's been such a blessing to be able to have, I don't even know why I get a voice in all this, but I've gotten one, and I've gotten to hear your voice and all the people that you've brought into the light and have given them community that they may have been denied for most of their life. So I think it's just really cool to get to be a part of this movement for however long or short it may be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just hope that people keep realizing that it's worth it to like pursue other people and to walk alongside them. And because it doesn't just change the person you're pursuing, it changes you. It changes your perspective on what's worth it and what priorities are and why we're here.
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, we weren't made to be alone, but we often like self-isolate or willfully do that to ourselves. And it's like,
Yes.
we're taking away the greatest thing we were given, which was each other. So yeah, just thankful to be here.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here. I always enjoy our conversations, and you're here because you have a different perspective on life than I do. And people like me that don't think like you do. That don't think in that positive realm. I mean, we experienced that early in the conversation. It's like my mind doesn't go there immediately.
Yeah.
It doesn't create this willpower of I can. It's the willpower of I can't.
Yeah. And that's
So,
interesting.
So, and that's why I've surrounded myself with the people that I have, because they're good, solid people, and they think very, very differently than I do. And they've surrounded themselves with me as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just a one-sided thing, but
No,
they've allowed me to come into their lives and be part of their families, and even speak into their children's lives, and which has been a huge privilege. Like I don't have that quality, I don't have that qualification, but they do it, and they love it, and I've built lifelong relationships out of that. So,
yeah, really
I mean, you're here because you bring a quality to the table that I cannot. And that's why everybody's on here.
Yeah, we all have those unique perspectives, which is why this is so cool.
Podcasting
is so cool.
It's supposed to be, it might be, at least my perception was it was supposed to be about suicide, and it is. It is, but it's more about living.
Yeah.
How do you live?
Yeah.
Even in the midst and with the positive. Like I can't get out of my head unless I hear something positive.
Yeah.
Unless I hear somebody doing it in a different way that's working for them, that's better than my detrimental way.
Because it lets you know that there is another way.
There
Because
is another way.
otherwise in your mind, there's just that one way.
Yeah.
And I think that can go for all of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good balance.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me, of course.
Talking to you is always good. So
We need to go get some dinner now.
I know. So, well, this is the Suicide Monk, and we'll see you on the flip side. All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week on the Suicide Monk. If you'd like to support us, please go to www.thesuicidemonk.com. And you can go and listen to our podcast from there, support us from there. But please go like and subscribe on Spotify. That helps us a ton. Really appreciate you listening. Love you all. And thank you so much. If you have questions, want to be on the show, want to discuss, just want to tell your story, or just need somebody to talk to, reach out through the website, on the email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. The Suicide Monk out.